Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the sixth edition of Tool Talk. Myself, Nishant Kashyap. I am editor at TAGMA Times magazine. I welcome you all on behalf of TAGMA management, secretaries, president, and vice president. So, as we know, automotive industry is the biggest customer of tooling industry globally. However, the automotive industry is also going through a lot of changes in recent time. For example, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, shared mobility, electrification in automotive is all being, seeing the biggest trend in the industry. Interestingly, there are many startups also coming in this domain, which was unimaginable 10 years back. For example, valuation of Tesla is higher than the next five companies put together. Ola is building world's largest company, two-wheeler manufacturing company in Chennai. So these are the kind of things we did not think 10 years back that any startup can come and build such a large company. So these are some of the interesting phase in automotive industry. However, it will definitely have some impact on the tier one and tier two suppliers and tooling companies as well. So how it will impact, what changes it will bring, and what changes tooling companies will have to do in their future strategies. All that we'll know in next 30 to 40 minutes. And to discuss all these things, we have Mr. V.T.Venkateshwara Rao, DGM of Mahindra and Mahindra. He is heading the tooling division. Welcome, Mr. Rao.
Thanks, Nishant. Thanks for the introduction. And yeah, if somebody wants to talk, I heard a voice in between. Can I continue?
Yeah, no, nothing.
Oh, okay. So thanks, TAGMA, for this opportunity to talk in this session. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to take out your time and be here to have a brief session on the impact of the changes and the trends that are going to come in India on the tooling industry. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Audience, just to give a little introduction of Mr. Rao. Mr. Rao did a diploma in mechanical engineering and post-diploma in plastic mold designs. In his career spanning 29 years, he has worked as a tool designer, project engineer, marketing manager, tool room manager, and business development manager in companies like Sridevi Tools, Mastercraft, Taco Corporate. Currently, he is working with Mahindra and Mahindra for last 14 to 15 years as a DGM, heading the tooling sale. He has handled all the plastic tooling in Mahindra and Mahindra SUVs. So I welcome you again, Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Nishant.
So before we start session with Mr. Rao, I would just like to request that there is a chat session where you can post your questions, which Mr. Rao can address at the end of the session. Also, I would request not to put any marketing material so that we can pick all the relevant questions which Mr. Rao can address at the end of this session. Right. So shall we start, Mr. Rao?
Yeah. So Nishant, before we just get into the content, I have to convey a disclaimer as per the policy of Mahindra and Mahindra. So the disclaimer is as follows. Whatever I speak today is not the opinion of M&M, and whatever I'm going to speak will not cause any damage to the proprietary or the confidential information of Mahindra or any other toolmaker or any other tier one. So this is the disclaimer I have to put in front of all of you, and then we can start. Yeah.
Sure, that's good. Yeah. So, Mr. Rao, to start with, if you can just talk about the trends which we are seeing or witnessing in the global and the Indian automotive industry. As I also mentioned few of the things earlier, but if you can just describe it in detail, what are the trends we are seeing in global and Indian automotive industries?
Okay, fine. So, Nishant, I'll split up this answer into two. So first portion, we will talk on the global, and then the second portion of the answer will answer what will happen in India. Okay. So in the global trends, normally what you see these days is there's a lot of development happening on autonomous mobility solutions. Companies like Google and other major OEs, they are working on completely restructuring the vehicle design. So the architecture of the vehicle is completely getting changed. They're working on how to create a volume inside the car considering these autonomous mobility solutions. They're also working on a lot of exteriors where probably there would be a lot of sensors which will come in because of this mobility solutions. And when they are doing this work, it is also predicted that probably the process of injection molding might change a little because there is a prediction that the part designs might have a lot of sensors embedded in the plastic parts. And also there will be probably a lot of transparent parts coming in these mobility solutions. So this is the first one that is happening globally. And when I move forward, the other area of development that is happening, or the trend that is happening, is the electrification and sustainability. So when we talk of electrification, which is known to everybody, that is the electrical vehicles. And sustainability is how do we bring in, how does the OEs bring in battery solutions? How do they create alternate energies? Because normally the problem is most of the energy sources are not renewable. Okay, so if you want to charge a battery, you need a power. So if you need power, so where do you get the power from? So these are a lot of complications on which OEs like BMW, Mercedes, VW are all working. So I think there would be a lot of solutions coming up with solar energy also. So this is the second trend which I titled as electrification sustainability. The problem here is, even though you bring in a lot of electrical vehicles and battery solutions, the problem stays in the phase where initially people were all talking of we want to convert to green, or we want to make everything green. But the question remains, how are these solutions going to give us a way that it is going to be a green solution? So fingers crossed. The answers are not very clear globally still. So people are struggling. So, but we will have to wait and see how does this complete solution, or the EV and alternate energy solution, turn into a green solution one day. So we'll have to wait for the time to tell us what's really going to happen. So this is the second trend that I talked about on electrification and sustainability. And the third trend that we see globally is use of laser technology. So a lot of OEs have started using laser technologies in lighting systems. And moving forward, the next trend that we see globally is the connectivity. So when we talk of connectivity, when you sit in the car, you see that the infotainment system, digital clusters, they're all turning to electronic architecture, which means you're getting big screens, big infotainment systems. So the complete electronic architecture inside the car is changing. So this is one of the other trends that you see globally.
Right.
So by far, these are the four trends that come to my mind that the globe is working on.
Yeah.
So now coming to the second portion of your question, which is India. India, things are very different. There could be one or two trends that we saw globally also fit in India, but the rest of the trends might be different. Right. So here I would say, I would tell that there is a large uplift happening in the EV segment, electronics, software, connectivity. So when I say there's a big uplift happening in EV, electronics, software, connectivity, it means, I'll just give you a few examples. So what is happening is there is a lot of work happening on ADAS. A lot of OEs are bringing ADAS now, which is the Advanced Driver Assistance System. They are bringing in adaptive cruise controls. They are bringing high beam assist. They are bringing in front collision warnings. And the infotainment, like I said, globally, even in India, you see now the infotainment systems have become quite large and you see a lot of digital clusters also coming in now.
Right.
So this is under the basket of uplifting of EV and electronics. So this is the first trend that we talked about in India. Moving forward, there's a very huge development or a new trend coming up, which I term it as quantifiable life. So when I say quantifiable life, people in India normally, what do we do? Let's say I go for a jogging on a Sunday. I say I have done a jogging of 5 kilometers. So when I talk to my friend or when I talk to my family, I say I have done 5 kilometers this week, and the next week I'm going to do 6 kilometers. So we normally, Indians, tend to quantify whatever we try to do, right? So when I correlate this quantification of the lively things that we do in daily basis to what is happening in the automotive sector, so the correlation is like this. So when you come with EV or you have the IC engines which are running on the roads now, so there would be introduction of a lot of databases coming into the cars. There would be a lot of commands apart from the manual driving. There would be a lot of technology which will come in. So I'm sure people will be talking of, let's say I've traveled in 3 hours and 20 minutes from Mumbai to Pune. So with the mixture of all the commands, databases, and the efficiency of the fuel or the battery, then people would be talking one day that, oh, last week I did 320, so this week I'm going to do 316. So probably there would be an adaptation of how to use the commands in the car and how to reduce the time. So probably the relation between the customer who is driving the car, the commands, the technology, there will be a lot of getting together. So this is the second thing that I talked about, which is quantifiable life. So you will see a trend of quantifiable life coming in India. Then the next area of development or the next trend that we see is the well-being. Not just because the COVID has come in between, but even probably without COVID, I think customers or people like us should have been more conscious on well-being. So when I say well-being in a car, so what is happening is there would be a lot of introduction of air purifiers, airbags, so that the fatality is reduced. Then in the seats, probably people will look at a lot of comfort in the seats. For example, the vent seats, and also technologies which will facilitate. Let's say I open the door of a car, then the seat goes behind, making a space for the passenger to come in, or the customer to come in, or the owner to come in. So you will see a lot of these comfort electronics also changing up in the near future. So moving forward, more trends like sustainability are also going to be seen very visibly. But the sustainability that I talked about at the global level may be different at Indian level. So the difference could be, apart from the, let's say, the alternate energies or battery solutions, we Indians probably have to look at maintaining the craftsmanship of a car or an SUV or a commercial vehicle, quality of the vehicle. And we also might look at how do we make it more green? Let's say, how do we recycle certain materials? Do we have alternates for these materials which cannot be recycled? And probably there could be a lot of introduction of new materials, new processes, which might eliminate a little of paint surfaces. And the most important thing is, even if the batteries come in, what will happen is the vehicles will become more heavier. So if you have to make them more fuel efficient, then probably we'll have to work on lightweights. So there would be alternate material selections, probably the sheet metal might be changed to plastics wherever it is feasible. And probably the densities of plastic raw materials might also undergo a change. So there would be a lot of lightweighting also coming in when we talk of the sustainability. And moving forward, one of the major things that also we will see is decision makers will be things like design. When I say the decision makers will be design, which means, let's say there's a car of a unique design. So we Indians normally tend to buy a car which is new on the road or new on the market, or which has come out newly from the OE. So unique designs might become decision makers for people. So these are some of the trends that you will see in India. So just to summarize, we talked about autonomous mobility solutions, electrification, laser technologies, connectivity at the global level. And in India, we talked of uplifting of EVs, electronics, and quantifiable life, well-being, sustainability, and unique designs. So more or less, these are the things that I'm aware of could be the global trends and Indian trends.
Right, right. So you highlighted quite a few trends that are shaping up in the Indian automotive industries. So what are the major changes we are going to witness in the in the vehicle design, and how it is going to change, how it is going to impact the tooling companies?
Okay. So if you talk of the major changes that you're going to see in the recent future,
Yeah.
for me, with the exit of General Motors and Ford, so my worry, or it may not be a worry, but my observation is we will have to keep and watch how many OEs are coming in and what would be the pace of the existing OEs and the newcomers inside India would be growing at.
Right.
So probably will be a high speed for somebody, but somebody will be a mediocre, somebody will be very slow. So these are some of the changes that we have to keep watching. And apart from this, we have to also see at what pace the vehicle selling would happen. Probably certain OEs would increase the volumes at a higher pace. Some OEs might decrease their volumes because of various reasons. So we have to keep a watch on the pace of the vehicles that will be sold in this country. And also, you will have to keep a watch on the type of vehicles that will be sold. Like, for example, there might be a lot of stress on commercial vehicles by certain OEs. There would be stresses on SUVs by certain OEs. And there could be OEs which would be a mix of small cars and SUVs. So even the types of vehicles that you will see on the road, off the road, will be interesting. These also will be a factor which will probably affect the tooling businesses.
Right.
And moving forward, you will have a lot of changes inside the car, which means we already discussed on the trends. So you will have a lot of smart surfaces coming inside the car. So these also might influence partially on the tooling businesses.
Right.
And one of the most important things, let me say there are two important things. One most important thing is you have to keep a watch, or we have to keep a watch on what would be the frugal mindset or frugal systems or methods that the new OEs that are coming into India would bring in. See, I'm sure when a OE comes to India, they would certainly see what is happening in India, what would be the cost structures that these existing OEs work with. Let's say it could be part cost, it could be tool cost, it could be overheads. So all the newcomers coming to India, I'm sure will work on these frugal methods, frugal thoughts, so that they can compete with the existing OEs in India.
Right.
So this is one of the other factor that is going to probably impact a little on the tooling also. And lastly, what we need to watch, and probably what we are still not watching, is the shakeup that is going to happen in the saturated companies and the new startups. When I say the saturated companies, see, probably certain companies are well satisfied with what businesses they are doing or with what revenue they are generating in India. So with the new OEs coming in, with the electrification coming in, with a lot of new startups coming in EV mobility, so there would be a shake. There would be a shake up in the saturated companies which are existing, and also there would be a shake in the startups. For example, what I am aware is I was really surprised to see a lot of two-wheeler companies in Pune, which are fresh startups, which I'm 100% sure that the tooling fraternity also still not aware that these two-wheeler companies exist in Pune. So I was really surprised, because whatever I came to know when I talked to these companies was they just import all the parts from China, they assemble it, and they sell it in India, and they're very happy with it. So if there was a connect between the tooling industry in India and these startups, then I should not have got this answer at all. So I think there would be a shakeup in the saturated companies and the startups. So overall, bottom line, to summarize this, there will be a consolidation which will happen in the near future, considering all these changes that you see in these businesses. Yes, Sushant. Yeah, Nishant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. So thanks for explaining this. So my next question is, as we know, tooling plays a very key role in production or design of any automotive. So what are the major expectations from the automotive OEMs from tool makers with respect to the procurement of tools?
So if you, I would say, okay, if you're confining this question only to India, or you're in general, or you're talking of in general?
Yeah, in general, and then maybe you can bifurcate it with the global or Indian one. So as a OEM, what are your expectations? You can talk, or any in general as.
Okay, it's very simple, Nishant. I'm sure with whatever interactions I have with the tooling companies that we work with or I have visited, it's very simple. We don't demand too much. We only say, you give us the right tool and the right part.
Yeah.
So this is what we want. We want the right tool, the right part, and probably to add to it, probably at the right cost. So we don't demand too much. So I can just put it in 3 words. So the right quality of tool, right quality of part, and the right price. Yeah, this is the expectation in general. So when I try to separate global versus India, so global, normally we don't have issues of timelines and quality of part and the quality of tool. I'm very specific. When I say global, I'm talking of the tool makers whom we have assessed and whom we work with. I'm not talking in general. There could be good, bad, ugly, but I'm talking of the good tool makers with whom we work. So when you compare the global and the Indian tool rooms, those good tool rooms, then probably we see a difference in cost, we see a difference in quality of both the part and the tool, and also the delivery timelines. The delivery timelines are very different from an Indian company and then a company with whom we work abroad. So these are the, in general, expectations, what I wish from an Indian toolmaker, or these are the areas which the Indian toolmaker have to look at.
Right.
Yeah, Nishant.
Right. So, so again, as a OEM or any OEM, you come from the OEM background. So, what are the key evaluation factors of any automotive OEMs before finalizing any tool room for any kind of any projects? So, what are the key parameters you look in certain companies?
Okay. So, in general, whatever small I know about companies with whom I've worked in the past, and also the OEs with whom I worked in the past, keeping all that in mind. So for me, the first priority is the attitude of the company as a whole. When I say the attitude of the company as a whole, it's very personal, which means we look at, or let's say in general, the OEs might look at the attitude of the whole team with whom they would interact. It could be the director of a company, it could be a design head, it could be a co-worker in the company who is at the down the level doing a polishing. So the attitude of the company overall is the first priority for me. If you have the right attitude, you tend to do what is right. But if you end up having a, you cannot call an attitude as a good and bad, but if the attitude is on the worst side, or say if it is not on the right side, so probably then the delivery from that particular company may not be as per our expectations. So we look at attitude, Then we come into, let me start from the process of tool making. So we look at what is the competency that a company has in design department in terms of softwares, competency of designs or skill levels of designs. What is the overall experience of a designer or a design head in that company? Then when we go down the manufacturing, we see what is the manufacturing capability in terms of machines, the make of machines, whether these machines are kept in condition, they are serviced and kept in place, or they're just using the old machine, which has very bad in terms of no accuracy. So we look into all these manufacturing capabilities when we do the assessments. And we also see if the manpower is trained in the assembly shop, in the machining shop, in the polishing area. And we also look at if the company has proper or enough, at least optimized inspection facilities, let's say for the part inspection, the tool inspection, in-process inspection. So these, and apart from these, if you move ahead in the complete manufacturing system, then we also look at what kind of cutting tools these companies are using. See, tool making is just not steel cutting. Okay, so we also look into what is the kind of cutting tools these companies are using. Do they have tool trial facilities? If they don't have in-house, do they have any support from outside available, which is close to them? Can we depend on them to do trials on urgency? So this is also a criteria that we look in. Then in general, we look if this company wants to work with an automotive manufacturer or an OE, does this company have a specialization in making tools for automotive plastic parts? So do they have know-how of plastics? Do they have know-how of tool making for automotive plastics? And finally, we also look at what are the systems or the procedures they follow in terms of manufacturing, in terms of program management, or how would they be conveying their manufacturing progress to the customer on daily basis or weekly basis. So all these are some of the factors that we would really be looking at when we assess a tool room to bring them on board. And if you are looking further on the complete process that normally happens, so after all these assessments are done, so normally the OEs send you an RFI, which is a request for information. So where all the details of the company is put in these papers in terms of your revenue or your turnovers, your number of people, what is the machinery that you have, the list of machinery, what are the softwares that you use. So RFI completely covers all the subjects till your balance sheet, whether that company is in profits, losses. So we come to know through these RFI once it is filled and sent it back to us. So once the RFI is through, we get convinced at our levels, then it goes to the next levels, to the senior management to get approvals. So when we go for those approvals, we have to have convincing answers. Is it the right time to bring in a new tool maker? Is it the right kind of a tool maker for a particular part? So if it doesn't fit in, so let's say I have a supplier already, I have 4 or 5 suppliers doing bumpers for me, then why would I bring in a 6th supplier? So we have to be answerable to all these questions. So we have to look at for which part are we bringing in this supplier or the tool maker? Is it going to suffice our requirements? Do we really need? So all these justifications are to be done. And again, we also give a feedback on what would be the tentative costing assumptions, or how would be they placed in the existing ecosystem that we have in terms of costing. So all these answers, if they're answered, convinced to the senior management, then probably we would get a green signal. And that's how we start floating RFQs, or we tell the tier ones to float RFQs on our behalf. So that's how is the process of getting a toolmaker on board in most of the ways.
Right. Thanks for your expectations. I'm sure it was very useful for toolmakers. Right. So moving on, as we know, most of the major global automotive countries also have a very strong domestic tooling industry, with India being an exception. As a lot of tools are still imported in India. So as an industry professional who has a great know-how about the industry and tooling know-how, what could be the reason for the same, according to you?
Okay. First thing is, so we don't need to downgrade ourselves. Yes. A lot of ways like see now because whatever I'm going to talk is not related to confidentiality of Mahindra, so I can use the name of Mahindra. See, in Mahindra in general, we do at about 60 to 70% of tools in India. In certain projects, it has gone to the extent of 90% also. When I say tooling, I'm referring only to the plastic injection tools. So in certain projects, it was 60 to 70% of work done in India with the Indian tool rooms. Certain projects was almost to the level of 90%. So the difference is, let's say why is it not 100%? Why is it 60%, 70%, or 90%? The reasons are very simple. See, in projects where we did to the extent of 90%, when we did the part design reviews, when we see the complexities of the tools, we could assess or we could infer that, okay, with this complexity, we can do this much portion of the whole business or these many tools in India with a certain risk involved. Probably few parts could have been the first time that we are working with a particular tool room, but we were ready to take the risk. So because somewhere we also have a responsibility of improving our own country, improving our own tool rooms. So with that risk in mind, we still go forward and probably do the first time toolings for particular parts, though it was not tried before with that particular tool room for those parts. So that is one of the reasons why you see that 70 has jumped to 90. But in general, it is to 60 to 70. The simple reason is none of the lamp toolings is done in India. We have done probably only one project or two particular projects in which the lamp toolings partially were done in India. We have not done the whole lamp business in India, but we have done, let's say there are 50 tools, probably we should have done 20 tools in India. And the other project, probably we have done 10 tools in India. So the problem here is, in India, we see that we do not have competency to make lamp toolings. So somehow the ecosystem has not developed, or tool rooms have not developed, or the ecosystem of the tier ones, OEs, tool rooms together have never bothered or have never put efforts on putting their interest or trying to make lamp toolings in India. It never happened. So lamp tooling is the major junk that comes to us as an imported tool. And apart from lamp toolings, we import a lot of precision tools. Okay, for examples, if I talk of companies who work on kinematics and mechanisms, I'm sure none of the tier one wants to work with Indian tool makers. And when I ask them the reasons, it's very simple. They say they do not have enough tool makers who understand precision, who understands accuracies in machining, and who understands timelines with precision together. So small kinematic and precision parts are also imported. And when I come to our area, which I'm talking of not the proprietary items like handles, but the other items which we outsource to tier ones for engineering and manufacturing. Let's say the air vents of a car, where you have air vents in the instrument panel, console. So most of the air vent tools also are imported. For the simple reason, again, these are normally precision and highly close tolerance manufacturing is required, both in a part as well as the tool. So we see that there is a shortage or shortcoming of the understanding, the manufacturing ability to do these kind of tools. So mostly we import a lot of air vent tools also.
Right.
So that's the reason you see that we are not able to do normally 90 to 100% of toolings in India, but normally it stays at 60 to 70. But I'm sure the other OEs like Maruti, to some extent Toyota, Tata Motors. I don't. Tata Motors probably is doing a lot of imports these days. So some of the other OEs are also trying to do a lot of localization in India, trying to work with a lot of tool rooms in India. But I have a complaint here because you touched this subject, and this is the right forum where there are a lot of people from tool rooms, and probably this message can go to CII. TAGMA can probably take this to CII or the governments at the top level in India. So what I see is, as a person, I can say this as a person. See, Hyundai sells a lot of cars in India, does a lot of exports in India from India. But the worst part is I've never seen them doing any injection mold in India. So why is it so? So why is this disconnect? I mean, I see that any country we travel, there's a lot of localization done by any OE which exists in that country. But here in this country, I don't know. So like probably Hyundai is an exception. So my request is, if there is a body which can take up this with the government, with the CII, with Hyundai, I think we should request them to do localization in India so that it's good for our economy and it's good for our all tool makers and the tier ones. I understand there are some tier ones who are working with the Hyundai. I understand, but I'm especially talking about the tooling business. Yeah, Janisha.
Right. So just a couple of more questions before we take on taking questions from the audience.
Yeah.
As you also mentioned, and we also know that electric vehicle is kind of a buzzword in the automotive industry, and it has considered as a game changer in the automotive industry. And definitely, once the EV becomes mainstream, there will be a lot of changes, or in the component business as well.
Yeah.
So, how this influence of EV will impact the tool making business as well?
For me, Nishant, it's very simple.
Yeah.
See, even if the EV comes in, see, the major change is going to happen in the engine compartment. Okay, today in the engine compartment, if I talk of plastics, probably there are intake manifolds, cam covers, ECU covers, probably there's a water inlet, there's a gas inlet or outlet. Okay, so these parts might die, or probably they may not be anymore needed after the EV comes in. But there would be a lot of plastics which will be in the battery compartment area also. So for me, if you see as a whole car business in terms of the tooling quantity, I don't see that EV is going to affect any of our tooling fraternity or tooling businesses that are happening in India, even for that matter, even abroad. So I don't see any ill impact of EVs coming in auto sector.
Okay. So if there will be a less number of products, so definitely there will be some product that will be added, some components.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be certain products added. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one last question from my side, which I asked to every speaker. So what are your suggestions to the Indian tool makers? As per your experience, you have worked in a tooling companies as well, and now from an OEM perspective. So with your experience, what are your suggestions to the Indian tooling companies so that they can reduce the import, start exporting from India? Any suggestions?
Yeah, for me, it's difficult. It's not a difficult question, but there are a lot of factors which the tooling fraternity in India has to focus on. There are a lot of factors which also influences the amount of business that OEs in India are doing with the tool rooms in India. So I'll try to figure out a few of them and name a few of them very distinctively. So first thing is Indian tool rooms have to improve their quality of tools, quality of the deliverables that they do in terms of the tool and the part. Okay. And apart from these deliveries, what they have to do is they have to build relation with the tier ones, with the OEs in India. So when I say relation building, it's not just going across, meeting somebody, and then okay, that particular meeting should not be the end of the relation. Okay, so you have to create an environment where you, the tier one, when I say you, I mean the toolmaker, the tier one, and the OE have to come together, which means there's a lot of relation building that has to be done between the toolmaker, tier one, and the OE. So this is very important. And apart from that, then the tool rooms have to look at their infrastructures, see how they can give good solutions or potential solutions to their tier ones who are their customers and the OEs finally. So you have to build relation, you have to bring in good infrastructure, you have to understand that quality is free, you have to give quality tools, quality products. And for example, see, now I'm surprised that when I give you an example in the initial phase, there are a lot of startups which have come up which need a lot of plastic parts in their two-wheelers who are run on EV. So, but I'm surprised that that gentleman whom I talked to has not come in touch with any of our tooling fraternity people. So I think there is some disconnect between toolmakers, tier ones, and the OEs in India. And then once you build that, then you have to see how you build an infrastructure, how you improve your quality. I'm sorry that I'm repeating this, but this is a very, very important thing that Indian tooling industry has to understand.
Right.
So you have to spend a lot of money in training your people. So team building inside the company is also very important. So when I ran through the assessing factors that I talked about a while ago, so you have to build the people inside the company, your own company. Let's say you have a tool room, then you have to ensure that skill development is done properly. They are motivated properly. Probably you have to spend a lot of money in training them. Probably you need to send them somewhere else in the country or abroad. You send them, train them, build in competency, bring in those skill set that is required. And you have to have your own relation or the relation with your internal teams also as well properly. So I see that in some of the companies, the directors of the companies do not have a proper relation with their workmen. So this is not done. So how do you expect your workmen to deliver a final good tool or a final good part to the customer? It doesn't happen if MD is just is just good to the OE or the tier one. It's not enough. The director has to have good relation within the company with his co-workers or with his workmen, with his workforce in the company till the down level, till the lowest level. For me, that's very important because each one of the person that is working in the company is responsible for something. Okay, if I talk of a polisher, he is responsible for the final finish of the tool, which will reflect on the part. So if there is a bad relation between the workman or between the senior management inside the company and the workman, the tool room would never deliver a good product. I'm sure they would never deliver a good product. So these are some of the things that I think as a company, as overall tooling fraternity, we need to work on, we need to improve on.
Right. Right. So thanks a lot for charting out your expectations, also giving suggestions to tool makers. So now let's start taking questions from the audience one by one. Next. So there is one question from Mr. Gopala Krishnan.
Yeah.
He asks, sir, in your opinion on how Indian tool rooms can take advantage of the present scenario with the full support from Indian government on their side with imposition of additional tariffs or import of tooling into India, especially China.
So, he's asking how would the Indian tool rooms take an advantage because of the tariff that is levied on the imports?
Yeah, basically the current geopolitical situation. So,
right. Sir Gopal sir, the answer goes like this. Yes, you're right. This is the situation, or this is the time where the Indian tooling industry can take an advantage with whatever geopolitical situation that we are in. So I'm sure that because of this situation that exists, a lot of OEs are trying to do more and more work within the country.
Right.
So with the thought process of the OEs and the government thought process which is happening because of the geopolitical issues, so the tool rooms can certainly take an advantage, approach the OEs, approach the tier ones, and see what they can substitute, which means, let's say an X part was being imported. So probably you can approach the tier one and the OE and tell us the X part can be done with these facilities in India with this particular tool room. So I'm sure that this is an advantage that the Indian tooling fraternity should pick it up. Barring the shortcomings that I talked about, barring the competency issues or the infrastructure issues. So let's say if a company is competent to do it, then yes, you should go and approach and get it done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there are a couple of questions from the electric vehicle side, and I think which you have answered also. Basically, the question is it threat or opportunity for tool makers?
I think for me, right now, whatever I can, whatever I understood, whatever I learned from people, it's not going to affect. It's going to affect only the part supplier who works on the engine compartment.
Right.
And to support that, see why I'm saying it's not going to affect the tool maker in India is there are very few tool rooms, probably you can count them on fingers, who really work on the engine compartment. Okay, the components itself is very low, and beyond that, the number of tool rooms who are working on these kind of parts is also very low.
Okay.
So for me, it should really not matter. The whatever plastics will come in as a substitute at the battery area should probably compensate. The impact will be the highest impact will be the tier ones. They will be impacted very bad. Yeah.
Right. So there's another question from Mr. Gopalakrishnan. He asks, normally how many parts or number of plastic molds are required to manufacture a complete new car?
Gopal sir, on an average, let's say it's at about 350 parts approximately. I'm just giving a wild number. It depends on the project to project. If I'm doing a light commercial vehicle, the numbers could be probably 260 or 100. When we are doing a full-fledged SUV, it could be almost like 400 to 450. So I'm just averaging it out at about 300 to 350 parts. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So there is another question from Mr.
Just sorry to interrupt, Nishant. So when I said the part numbers, I actually meant the tool quantity. Part numbers can be LH, RH, then the numbers might multiply, but more or less this is the number of tools that we work. Yeah.
Okay. So there is question from Mr. Deepak Mandhare. He asks, as a tool steel supplier, how we can improve to serve OEMs? So what are the OEM expectations from tool steel suppliers to achieve everyone's goal? Yeah.
It's a difficult question. This forum, okay. See, normally, every OE for that matter, okay, let me answer this personally. Let me not put it with respect to Mahindra, but let me answer this personally. See, when we look at steels, we look at which is the right kind of steel which will go into that particular plastic or that particular product. Okay, so when we look into the details of the steel that we have to use for that particular product, we get into details of what is the composition of the steel and what has been the general history of that steel in terms of porosity or in terms of defects that were found in the steel. What is the history of that steel in terms of texture, polishability, machinability? So we get into all these details, and we normally don't tend to play around with steels. Let's say we're working with 2 or 3 steel suppliers. Let's say there are 4 or 5 which have come in new to India. Somebody says, okay, I'm importing steel from China, so why don't you use our steel? So normally we don't get into those deviations. So we assess thoroughly, and if we find that there is no issue with the steel with which we are working on, we tend to continue. And we don't entertain somebody coming and saying that we are importing so much of steel from China, so why don't you use it? Because there are a lot of assessment, homework, a lot of hard work, effort which has gone in the past.
Right.
A lot of parameters that have gone in finalizing the steel. So normally that's the reason we don't tend to change. But to answer him, yes, if a steel is good enough, it is proven, and it has got a history, then I think he can approach certain OEs.
Right. There is a question from Mr. Santosh Kumar. He asks, do you think Indian government need to focus professional tooling engineering facility or college in India to increase the number of skilled manpower?
For me, I think we have enough centers or technical centers or colleges that are training good amount of children or good amount of people. The problem is most of the people who are trained work in the tool rooms for some time and then they change the profession.
Right.
So that is the problem in this country. Otherwise, I don't see that you have any shortcome of the training institutes for that matter. I don't think so. You have enough training institutes in this country. The problem is the students or the people who are trained work for some time and run away from the tooling industry. That's the problem.
Okay. There is another question from Mr. Muhammad Zubir. How to register one's company in OEMs, vendor or supplier registration?
I think we have
Probably
done. Yeah, I
yeah.
think I've answered that. I told him I told you all that what are the parameters that we look at, and in case there is a need, only then we add up with all justifications.
Right.
Yeah.
From Mr. Ashish Bhansali, what is the shift from Mahindra for making tools in China to India in percentages?
See, in China, if you see, we have been doing mostly lamp toolings and some huge parts which cannot be done in India. So apart
Okay.
from that, whenever we see any part design that can be done in India, the first preference is India. So we are not a company, or we are not of this opinion that if it can be done in India, still we want to push it to China or so. No, never. So to answer, probably he has got one more question on the back of his mind, but to answer him, so yes, we are looking at substitutes for China for the tools which cannot be done in India.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. From Mr. Sohan, what is the reason why OEMs do not support local tool room to build this talent of building lightning tools?
I think I touched on the subject. Yes, we attempted a few tool rooms. That's what I said. As an improvement, I also mentioned that in the last two projects that are happening in our company, we have done whatever was possible to train people or to educate people with the support of the tier ones. We have done that, and we have attempted, and we are successful also to some extent in doing certain lighting tools in this country, in our country. Yeah.
Right. So there is question from Mr. Parag Kunte. What are the future technological challenges foreseen in injection molding technologies?
I think in terms of injection molding, I don't see any big change for the simple reason when we talk of in-mold decoration or double injection or triple injection, all these happen, but there are not many tool makers who do double injection in India. We import wherever we have complicated double injection, we import, but if it is a simple double injection, we do it in India. So in terms of technology at tooling, I don't see there's any major change that is going to happen. Probably we have to improve on our competencies of making good tools. That's more relevant here.
Okay.
apart from the lightings that we discussed. Yeah. Yeah.
From Mr. Vedivel, there is question on should OEMs consider to make a certain percent of tools to be done with enterprise, which are small and medium enterprise, so the industry standard gets increased from down level.
For me, again, here I mean, see, I have told the disclaimer when we started off the program.
Yeah.
So, see, normally it so happens for me, it so happens. Let's say I have 100 tool rooms in this country, but we would assess based on the requirement. Only then we would pick a new one if it is really required, because we don't want to part with a tool maker with whom we have been working for many years, and unless and until he has failed to deliver in terms of quality, timeline, cost, we don't look at new tooling companies. If it is really not required, yes, we don't work. And it's not possible to answer very well further. It is not possible for any particular single company to, feed hundreds or thousands of companies that exist in this world, or hundreds of tool rooms that exist in this country. So
Right.
it can be distributed among OEs, but one single OE cannot fulfill the requirements of all the tool rooms in this country unless and until it is found exceptionally well, where we really need new technologies or new competencies. Yeah.
Right. So from Mr. Kannan, there is a question on the 3D printing side. So what's the focus and futuristic vision towards adopting the metal 3D printing based solution of 3D conformal cooling concept in your tooling as well as your existing injection molding suppliers?
Kannan is from which company?
I can't see that here.
Okay, fine. To answer Kannan and you, Nishant, we have been using a lot of 3D printing. Probably if Kannan does not know for his knowledge, even in the last projects that we have done, last 3 projects, there are a lot of 3D printed inserts that we have used in our projects.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So there is another question from Mr. Sri Ganesh. Are mod cities a need of the hour? And since all the people related to the tool making will be in the same place, this would help reduce the cost and timeline. Basically, I think he's talking about the cluster. So should we have a cluster in India, for tooling cluster in India, so that we can have all the ecosystems or all the technologies in one area itself?
See, what I would think is, or what I think is, we can have clusters in India, no doubt. And if you see, as it is, if you see in terms of the OE's locations and the cluster locations in terms of the tier 1s and the tool rooms. Now, if you see that Pune, Mumbai, and the western region has become a cluster already, right? In the south, if you see Chennai and Bangalore has become a cluster. In the north, if you see, there are not many tool rooms, but whatever you have, probably you have it in Noida and Gurgaon. So I think we already have clusters existing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just a couple of more questions as we are already running out of time. So there is a question from Mr. Suresh Kumar, and an interesting one, I guess. How Indian tool makers are different from Chinese tool makers?
I think we've covered this, but I'll again answer him. So why do we source from China? So let's start from the question, why do we source from China and what do we source from China?
Right.
So things normally, what I know, what I have been doing. So normally whatever cannot be done in India is sourced from China, or for that matter, from any other country. Okay. So it could be a huge bumper which does not go into any of the machines that are available in India, or a huge IP where probably a tool room does not even have a crane capacity to lift that tool. And the other side is the small and precision tools, where let's say I have to do 30 tools of air vent tools in 10 weeks. I don't think there are many tool rooms in India who can handle this.
Okay.
And the OEs will not have time to distribute these 30 tools among 5 tool rooms and try to match up the assemblies. It's just impossible. So normally the whole garment assembly, we tend to do it with one tool room. And the other area that I already told was the lamps. So lamps, as it is, we are in the process of developing the competency in India. We're pushing a lot of tool makers. So right now, we don't have competency to do lamp tooling. So lamp toolings are normally imported, not from only China, but lamp toolings come from Korea, lamp toolings come from Taiwan and China too. Okay.
Right. So there is one question. What is your opinion on reduction of painting on plastic parts?
Yeah, so I randomly touched on this subject when we were talking on the when we talked about the major changes that are going to be seen in the auto industry. So yes, because the paint surfaces can be eliminated to some extent in the interiors, we can look at alternative methods. But for some more time on the exteriors, I'm sure you will not be able to avoid paint on bumpers. So on the interiors, on the glossy parts, there are OEs, there are tier ones who have already moved from painting to making as molded glossy parts.
Right.
So that work is on, and it's a continuous process. So it would reduce the cost of the part. It would reduce the overheads of the tier one. So yes, the work is happening, and it is a continuous process.
Right. So I think there aren't many more questions here. So anyways, we are on time, I guess. So there is one last question we'll take, which is from Mr. Jose Alexander. How we can control the monopoly of supplier like standard parts and steel, which recommended by OEM for both cost and the delivery time?
I don't know what Alexander does, in which kind of business he is. Probably he's into cooking and he's asking this question. Then to answer him, it is very simple. See, if there is a quality of steel which suffices or which fulfills all the requirements, then I don't need to change the steel to a cheaper steel which is bad in quality or which does not fulfill my requirements. This is on the steel. Yes, if there is a substitute which fulfills all the requirements, yes, you can move to the substitute. When it comes to the when it comes to the standard elements, why do we specify standard elements? Let's say I make a specification for a tool. So why do we specify? We specify in order to control the tool design, in order to control the tool life, and in order to reduce the tool maintenance. So we want trouble-free. The same as with the tier one. When he gets a tool from a OE, he wants trouble-free tools. And whatever I have seen in the past is wherever we have picked up or assessed suppliers in terms of hydraulic cylinders, ejector pins, steel, and couplers. So normally we assess this, we see if these are trouble-free elements, if they are manufactured the right way, if the service or the, let's say the hot runner system, you need a lot of support on the field. So we see all this, we assess all this, only then we put the names in the specification sheets. We don't want to end up giving a choice to the tool maker, and let's say he has manufactured an ejector pin in-house, or he has sourced it from some small supplier who does not understand the process of making an ejector pin, and he puts in that tool and gives it. Let's say we have to make 400 cars a day, and the tool breaks down just because of an ejector pin. So it's a hell. So these are some of the reasons why we are very specific about mentioning the brand or the name of the company that makes cylinders or ejector pins or steel or hot runner. in our specification sheets. Finally, we want everything to be all right and our life to be trouble-free. So that's the intention of all this ecosystem.
Right. So I think we are close to the end. Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, for taking all the questions from me and from the audiences. And I'm sure we are all going back today with a lot of insights, and we have learned a lot about the expectations from OEMs, and also you have made a lot of suggestions to makers. So I'm sure it will help them all. To the audience, if you have any more questions, you can write to us, and then we'll send those questions to Mr. Rao and get back to you with his answers. Thank you so much all for attending today's session. Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, for
Yeah,
sharing
Nishant,
your.
I'll take a minute, Nishant.
Yeah.
So thank you, Nishant. Thank you, TAGMA, for this opportunity, and thank you to all the audience for taking out your 1 hour and coming here to whatever talk or whatever tool talk we just went through. So thank you all. Thank you all. Please take care. Stay safe. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.